Fine. Gina, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
Okay. B, okay.
We are broadcasting live to the public. I was notified that B had to step out and Alicia will be stepping in, so I just promoted her to panelist.
Okay. And I am trying to turn on, you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. There we go. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and stop my video.
Councilmember Rogers, I just wanted to let you know I have tried promoting you to panelist, but I don't see you moving to that side yet.
You know, I can't see myself anywhere.
I can hear you.
This is Diana. Okay. Can you see me?
I can see you. It looks like you're frozen right now, but I can hear you pretty clearly.
Okay. I can hear you okay. I don't want to be a weird frozen person. Would it be better if I took my video off?
If that's what you prefer right now, I will admit your frozen face was a priceless one. So, but now you're less frozen. So,
in some ways, I feel like you should screenshot it and send it to me. Just like
it's already changed. I wish I had
on you.
I wish I had thought of that sooner because now it's on a perfectly fine one. Councilmember Rogers, I have enabled your speaking permissions from the attendees side. I have asked permission for you to come over as panelist, but I don't see you moving over.
Dana, I see.
Howdy, Dina.
Hi, Mayor. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I'm just working on getting Councilmember Rogers promoted to panelist. I think she might be having some tech issues, so I'm working on it with her. Oh, there she goes. Just moved.
What's up, Natalie? Dina, just let me know when you're ready to get moving.
It looks like we have all the necessary staff members on, and we have your quorum. Councilmember McDonald and Councilmember Rogers are on as well.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the order then. Thank you everybody for being here. Go ahead and call the roll to officially get started.
Thank you. Councilmember Rogers,
Present.
Councilmember McDonald,
Here.
and Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Let the record show all Climate Action Subcommittee members are present.
All right, let's start off with public comment for non-agenda items. If you have a comment for this committee, go ahead and hit the raise hand feature on your Zoom. All right, seeing none, we'll keep going. Let's go to department reports. Tasha, Peter, do we have any departmental reports for today?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we have no department reports for today.
All right, we'll keep going then to item
Thank you, Peter.
4.1. That's our drought update.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor Rogers and members of the subcommittee. Just going to share my screen here. Give me a moment. I think I need to swap the display, it looks like, huh?
I can see, as I say, I can see your dual screens.
Okay, now we're on. Okay.
There you go.
Thanks for working through that with me. All right. So yeah, good afternoon, Council, Mayor Rogers and members of the subcommittee. Today, I will be providing a drought update, and it'll be kind of a fun presentation, at least from my perspective. We'll be able to cover some of the metrics, related to some of the climate action plan goals that the city has set, as far as our implementation of water use efficiency, and then kind of see where we're at in terms of this drought, and then of course give us an opportunity as a water department to toot our own horn a little bit, as well as for the city as well. So just real quick, I wanted to summarize, the region obviously is experiencing a third consecutive dry year. 2019 and 2020 water years and 2020 through 2021 water years were two of the driest years in the region in 128 years of record keeping. I believe the 2020-2021 water year was the second driest on record, with the exception of the 1976-77 water year. And really, we've been in a drought response. Formally, the City Council enacted Stage 3 of the Water Shortage Contingency Plan in July of last year. And within that, Stage 3 has a 20% community-wide reduction in water use. That is mandatory requirement. And there's corresponding restrictions on water use to help us achieve that 20% community-wide reduction in water use. And that 20% reduction in water use is in comparison to 2020, which was the last year before drought declaration. So I just want to remind everyone, we're very lucky, some forward-thinking folks decades ago did put Sonoma Water's Lake Sonoma in play for the region, and those contract storage supplies supply a significant amount of water for Santa Rosa Water. Santa Rosa drives about 92% of our water supply in any given year from Sonoma Water's contracts. We have a 3 to 4 year regional storage supply in Lake Sonoma. However, given that there are cutbacks as required for Lake Sonoma's contractors, Santa Rosa has received allocations in terms of reduced allowances for water deliveries from Sonoma Water in both 2021 and 2022. This graphic here just gives you sort of a timeline of some of that drought response, and it's been a lengthy one. We really started to get pretty nervous in terms of water supply dating back to that early prior to winter 2020 and 2021. As I mentioned, 2019, 2020 was one of the drier years we've had in a long time. So really that winter, we started to see some challenges coming, especially for the Upper Russian River as a region. Santa Rosa Water did begin a dry winter campaign, which was sort of a very soft message around people conserving water because it hadn't rained much. And then really what kind of was the trigger was on April 21st, Governor Newsom stood in the dry shores of Lake Mendocino and declared a drought in both Sonoma and Mendocino counties. We were the first 2 counties to be in a drought declaration, and that really triggered response from the region. We had been working towards a regional campaign for quite a while, but truly that's kind of where we launched the Drought is Here, Save Water campaign for the first time. Sonoma Water did file temporary use change petitions during that time frame, requesting allowances to reduce their releases from their reservoirs. In return, they were required to reduce their diversions by 20%. At that time, right around when they filed that petition, Santa Rosa City Council did adopt a 20% voluntary water use reduction. And then after that, in June, the State Water Resource Control Board mandated that Sonoma Water does reduce their flows by 20% from the time frame of July through December of 2021. Ultimately, the City Council on June 29th, adopted a resolution declaring a drought emergency and required 20% community-wide water use reduction. We did receive allocations during that time frame, which were ultimately lifted thanks to some atmospheric river storms that occurred in October of 2021. We were looking at having to have requirements in all the way through December. And as you can imagine, without outdoor water use occurring much in the winter months, it does become very hard for us to make those necessary reductions. So we did get some early relief this year, but unfortunately, it didn't really rain much after that. So we had the second driest January and February on record in Northern California this winter. And so we launched our Drought is Still Here campaign, just reminding folks to continue to stay diligent. Those 20% mandatory reductions in water use were in place. And then again, Sonoma Water had to file another temporary use change petition requesting relief from their mandated flows and releases in the Russian River to protect that storage. That was ultimately granted by the State Water Resource Control Board. And similarly, much like last year, we remain with a 20% reduction in diversions, Sonoma Water and its contractors. And so thus we've been given allocations for the months of July through October of 2022. So if you want to scale it down as to where we're at today, the water supply picture hasn't changed much since last year. We're still very much in the thick of a drought, and supplies are about where they were at this time last year, which is still very low in the overall operations of Lake Sonoma, where we get our contract supplies. I just wanted to make a note that the State Water Resource Control Board did adopt emergency conservation regulations on May 24th. And really effective in June, all commercial, industrial, and institutional customers statewide are required to no longer irrigate what they deemed non-functional turf. And there are some limited exceptions specific to recycled water. Of course, if there's shrubs or trees that are watered on the same turf irrigation line, there was some allowances for that. But ultimately, it was a state mandate and it is being enforced by the State Water Resource Control Board. We did institute direct outreach to all our commercial, industrial, and irrigation customers. Hundreds of those customers statewide, actually maybe thousands, and letting them know that this was in effect and they were expected to comply, and directing them to the resources at the state. We did ultimately actually get quite a bit of engagement as a result of that. So there was some net positive out of this regulation. But then just ultimately too, with that action, statewide, all urban water suppliers are required to implement their water shortage contingency plans to what they term level 2, which is our level or stage 3, which is a shortage level consistent with up to 20%. So statewide, all water agencies are expected to comply with this with very limited exception. So with that water shortage contingency plan, this is something that is a foundational document that is a citywide document adopted by council. It is required by law for urban water suppliers, and it defines the shortage level and the corresponding actions or stages of that shortage level that are necessary. So it's a kind of prescriptive plan, but it is very necessary when we know we have either long or short-term water shortages or emergencies. And so what kind of goes into that planned response and is dictated by that plan is really, there's some components which I'm going to cover in my next few slides, and those are really outreach and education, providing our customer service and assistance to those customers, establishing prohibitions and restrictions on water use, ensuring compliance and enforcement of that, and then really monitoring and reporting out on progress as that goes on. So I'll cover each of these particular 5 bullets in these next few slides. So as I mentioned, we've had a regional campaign going on for nearly 2 years now, and the Sonoma-Marin Saving Water Partnership, we're very lucky and unique in that we have 13 different utilities throughout Sonoma and Marin County that coordinate on a regional messaging and also on conservation outreach and other activities as well. And really through this campaign, we've been able to ensure consistent messaging throughout the region so that there's no confusion. You'll see a very particular look and feel to the outreach and messaging. And there is sort of this toolkit that we've given to each of these utilities, recognizing that they all have very different customer bases and different ways that they need to get their information out, but sort of this ready-made outreach kit. And there's a lot of coordination that goes on to make this happen. And it is a substantial effort, and it takes a while. It seems like a real push every spring to get this going, but kind of once it gets going, that work just really pays dividends in that consistent messaging. And that includes advertisements. We're covering both digital and traditional radio, as well as social media. And then this year, we're really focusing on events and workshops. We've had our pop-up event, and so you'll see we've kind of branded these regional pop-up events, so you can see where the different utilities are going to be. You can interact with water professionals, get supplies and other tips to how to conserve water. And then we've worked a lot with Daily Acts and others, as well as through the partnership, to host a series of workshops. We're making full utilization of Zoom. So many of those workshops are recorded, and people can go back and see things. We've focused a lot on gray water, tree care during drought, and various other ways that folks can be very conservative with their water use outdoors. And it's been a great educational tool. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we've done is having events and workshops. We've participated just this year in post-COVID times in more than 30 events. We're getting out there as much as possible. During time, we did host 3 drought drop-by events, which some of the council members also helped participate in and hand out lots of kits. Very wary of COVID restrictions when that occurred. But it was the way that we kind of managed to get as much tools in the hands of our customers as possible. And then we posted 15 workshops in partnership with the Daily Axe and UC Master Gardeners. Folks can go to srcity.org/pop-ups and see where we're going to be next, or srcity.org/workshops to sign up for the various Water Smart workshops we may have. And of course, you can go back and see old workshops, videos, and recordings if you'd like to learn how to install a rain barrel or maybe a gray water system. And then, just in terms of drought response, customer service and assistance is a key part of that. That picture above was actually from a recent spot we had on NorCal Public Radio. They covered some of our staff going on water audits. Folks have been asking for water audits quite a bit. They want to make sure that their irrigation systems are in tip-top shape and that they're making full utilization of everything that the city offers. During this drought, we did increase the cash for grass rebate to $1.50 per square foot, and we're seeing renewed interest in that. We also added a pool cover and pool removal rebates, making sure that pool owners are using their water wisely as well and giving them the tools to do so. And then we've been very busy with offering in-person home and business audits. We offer DIY audit kits too if folks don't feel comfortable with staff coming into their homes. That includes a virtual follow-up. And our calls and emails have been up about 800% compared to 2019. As you can imagine, there is very much a community feel to this drought. People always are wanting to pitch in and learn more. So we're very thankful for Santa Rosa, the community, in heeding the call in terms of the drought. And then drought response, as far as compliance and enforcement, we are making full utilization of the advanced metering infrastructure that is in place now. And it's really allowed us to see when there is a leak in someone's home and notify them and follow up directly. We can actually see metered use on an hourly time step or even more, and see that something is running or leaking in a home and follow up with that customer much quicker than if they noticed a really big bill, for instance, a couple months later. So it's been an incredible tool, and we know it's paying dividends in terms of being more efficient with water. And then, of course, we have renewed our water waste patrols throughout early in the morning, looking for folks that have water running off of their property. And we really don't want to be punitive. This is an opportunity to educate customers about their water use and leaks. We're getting folks through this process to sign up for our new Water Smart portal, which allows folks to track their water usage and set alerts for when maybe they do have a leak or see high usage in their house. And it's been a great opportunity to use this new technology. And ultimately, we've seen a 17% reduction in water use for the past year. So from the beginning of July, when the City Council enacted Stage 3, overall, it's been a cumulative 17% water use reduction. You can see from this graphic here, those orange bars are sort of our targets. It's very easy to make those targets in July, August, September, and June, when there's a lot of outdoor usage. It becomes more difficult in those months of December and January and February. So we're hoping that we eventually will catch up. We did get some of the data finally yesterday. It looks like in terms of reductions for the month of July, last month, we did see a 30% reduction, and that's in comparison to 2020. So we think that we'll start to see some gains again in terms of cumulative reductions in water use and holding with that 20% target for the citywide reduction in stage 3. So this is just a kind of a busy graphic, and I'm sorry for that. But as I mentioned, calls to the water use efficiency team have gone up significantly in comparison to pre-drought. We've recently got 3 new student interns on board. Very thankful for the work that they do in supporting customers, as well as 1 temporary staff to help us. That's all outlined in the water shortage contingency plan that we will, if needed, hire temporary staff to support the drought efforts. This is quite an uptake in, especially with regards to cash for grass rebates that have been issued over the past 2 years, and the total square footage. As I mentioned in an earlier slide, commercial customers, that non-functional turf irrigation ban, right after that went out, we saw several commercial customers started to ask us about removing large portions of lawn. So we anticipate this will only increase, but as you can see, we've already removed a couple thousand square feet of turf just in the beginning of this drought. So making some progress there, and then renewed interest in several of our other rebates. Gray water systems, rainwater systems typically require quite a bit of investment of time and effort, and we're still trying to give the customers all the tools that they need. And a lot of that, the feedback we've gotten is that they want more education on how to do that. And so we've really taken that to heart, and we're focusing our workshops on preparing folks to be able to install gray water systems or rainwater harvesting systems in their homes as well. And then, of course, definitely seeing an increase in water waste reports. They have the online water waste reporting form. People can pick up the phone and call or email. We've seen over 800 water waste reports being followed up just in the last year. And so I did want to just tie this all back to what the Climate Action Subcommittee, some of the work that this Climate Action Subcommittee has done, and that is really, we do have a climate action plan, a citywide climate action plan, and it did have specific targets and performance measures that were part of that plan. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to show you how we're doing in terms of those performance targets, and how droughts have kind of shaped the landscape with meeting some of those targets as well. So there were multiple measures in the 2012 Climate Action Plan, and they do have performance targets and metrics with them as well. And those are just generally conserving water, and then requiring reduction in potable water use for new development. The city is very progressive and has been very progressive with requiring new development to be very water efficient. In some cases going further than other municipalities in terms of requesting water efficient landscapes, taking advantage of many of the tools that are out there to in plumbing codes and things like that, making sure that those are all put into the city's requirements and codes for new buildings. And then really just expanding water conservation efforts. We're always looking for ways to do that. And we've been done that for years now. And then ultimately the requirement, the implementation measure of adding water meters which track real-time water use. That project was completed within the last couple of years, and those have all been converted. All 54,000 of our individual meters have been converted to smart water meters with advanced metering infrastructure, which I previewed in some of the previous slides. But the targets were very clear in 2015, starting in 2015, a goal of total gallons per capita per day. That is not individual household use, that's total system-wide use. So that accounts for all the businesses and water use at parks and various things that people use water throughout the day outside of their home, and it's just a collective gross gallons per capita per day. And then ultimately the target was to get to 110 gallons per capita per day by 2035. And with that, there were some significant metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents that were to be achieved through meeting these targets. When the plan was done, they did evaluate, how those metrics would ultimately help the community reduce their emissions, and so those equivalents were assigned to those targets. So this graphic here, so sorry, it's a little busy again, but the blue line is the one we really want to focus on. That is that gross, total gallons per capita per day. Since 1990, we've had 30 years of water use efficiency efforts by the city. We've experienced multiple droughts, and kind of what I want to highlight here is we do tend to see a dramatic reduction in water use coming out of those droughts, which are shown as those gray lines there. But what the real story is that we don't ever see it fully rebound. And so where you would see that, perhaps you think of flatten out, it has just continued a trend of folks being more and more efficient with their water use. And so, these droughts do sort of shape people's perspectives on the availability of water, and they do become more efficient. So what ultimately this has led to is a 45% decline in peak gallons per capita per day over that 30-year time frame. And I think we like to use that statistic often, is that we as a city use 14% less water than we did in 1990. And this is all despite 53% increase in population during that same time frame. So the city actually uses less water than it did in 1990, despite quite a few new residents. So this is a good story, and it shows that part of the whole picture of moving forward as a community is water use efficiency. We do realize that there is some diminishing returns, and so that's something we're contemplating. But we do believe there's more to go. But as you can see, we far exceeded those targets that were set in that climate action plan for the current timeframes of 2015 through 2035. And at this point, the community has already exceeded the 2035 target established by that plan. So anything under 100 gallons per capita per day is extraordinary in terms of urban water use. So we are one of the most efficient, cities in the state. So I think that the community should take a sense of pride in that, and there was an investment to make that happen. If you're just curious and you want to be a little competitive, we do have some of the lowest gallons per capita per day in terms of, this was a 2020 figure. It hasn't since gone down a little further. But this was a mandate of a 20% reduction by 2020. We far exceeded that target, which is in the red line. And we are one of the most efficient cities or utilities in the region. And so, just hats off to this community for that. So, but this is all good, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to note that while water use efficiency is an incredible part of our water supply portfolio, we are looking forward with an eye specifically on climate change. And so a study is proposed to be kicked off here very shortly. And the award is occurring perhaps even this summer. And it is tagged for completion in 2023. The City Council has actually incorporated this water supply alternatives plan as part of their goals for this year. I'm making progress for that, but really the purpose is to take a look at all opportunities to enhance the city's long-term water supply resiliency and reliability, and really be more adaptable to climate change and these potential for very long, prolonged dry periods. So we plan to study the feasibility of a wide range of potential water supply sources, things like potable reuse, groundwater capture, stormwater capture, other things like that, and really study the feasibility of achieving sort of the goals that are out there. We do recognize that in far out planning, there is a very good likelihood of continuing shortages. And so how we achieve that could result in planning ahead for a variety of different water supply options. And so we'll develop and adopt a plan with portfolios to really achieve those far out goals of 2045. So we're very excited about this effort. We plan to engage the public and our elected officials quite often on this. So this should be a very fun project. I guess maybe, my idea of fun isn't the same as everyone else's, but this is an exciting project. So with that concludes my presentation. If anyone has any more interest in more water smart resources, and go to srcity.org/watersmart. And of course, we provide all of the latest drought updates on srcity.org/savewater. So happy to take any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. If you could go back to slide 15 for a quick second, I had a question.
Okay. 15, right?
Yes. And so it is one of the most frequent questions that we get from the public. Why are we continuing to build housing when we're in a drought? And this chart and the previous chart both jump out at me a little bit, just because in terms of housing production over the last 10 years in particular, Santa Rosa and Roanoke Park have been the two that have developed the most housing units in the county. And yet they're the two that are the lowest in per capita use per day. I don't know if we've ever tracked this against RENA numbers that have come in, but it might help tell a compelling story about how higher density housing is a much more efficient delivery model for our resources, including water. And if you go back to the previous chart, I think it was, yes. I just wanted to make sure I completely understood and that the public completely understood what you said, which is that in a total water usage, looking at it from total water usage, we use less water now than we did in 1990, even though we've grown by what percentage?
53% increase in population. So it's a 14% reduction in total water use. So we purchase and use less water than we did in 1990 right now today.
Yeah. I just want to commend the team. Those are just kind of astounding statistics to me, and it's one that I will certainly be prodding other cities with later and touting the good work that Santa Rosa Water is doing. Council members, do you have any additional questions?
No questions, Mayor. I'm just really happy to see the numbers, and I think that the Santa Rosa Water is doing a great job.
Same for me.
I'll also
Mayor,
mention.
thanks.
All right, great. I'll also mention, Peter, you talked about the tool, online tool. We actually had a leak at our house that we caught because I've been religiously checking that tool, and typically we're around. My wife and I were usually around 50 to 60 gallons in our household per day. And we had 2 days in a row that were around 150 gallons when we had done nothing different. And we were able to actually find a leak as a result of the tool. So it is handy for folks to kind of know where you're at and to regularly check it. Just want to thank you for that. With that, let's go ahead and go to public comment, see if anybody has a comment on this item. Okay, seeing none. Really appreciate it, Peter, and we'll move on to item 4.2.
Thank you very much.
Sean and Yuri, good to see you guys.
Good to see you as well.
There we go.
Should I share my screen?
Yeah, let's go jump into it.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, Mayor, council members. We're excited to present a project that has been a long time in the works. Many people in Santa Rosa have been advocating for the implementation of electric buses, and we're here today to kind of detail how your work has come to fruition. See, are you seeing on my screen Sean and my name, or is that not showing up? I wonder.
No names.
Not showing the entire image. We'll see if it continues to be problematic. So,
Fancy.
Oh, there they go.
oh, there they go. It's, I didn't realize what I built into it. Okay, so yeah, so Sean and I will be presenting today. Sean's our administrative analyst. I'm the transit planner, or one of the transit planners here in transit and in transportation and public works. So, where are we related to electrification of city buses? And that's what we're here to detail today. We generally know our direction. The state of California, via the California Resources Board, has set our direction with requiring bus electrification. We know the benefits. Staff and council have discussed the benefits at previous meetings, and we know the benefits of operating a 100% battery electric fleet. We've done enough planning in collaboration with our regional transit operators, the RCPA, Regional Climate Protection Authority, and Sonoma Clean Power. The complexity of operating a 100% battery electric fleet has been thoroughly studied. We have funding to get started. Our Transit Vision administrative analyst, Sean Sos, who's with us today, has been incredibly bold and successful in acquiring funds for this project. We're here today to detail how we're starting to build in the process and receive guidance as we move forward. So our general direction, the task of electrifying the city fleet has kind of fallen into phases. We're lumping everything that we've done thus far into phase one. We're in the middle of this phase right now. Back in 18-19, we received $2.8 million for 4 buses and charging infrastructure. We reached out, and Sonoma Clean Power assisted by hiring a consultant to assist Sonoma County bus operators to understand the complexity of operating a 100% battery electric fleet. The city was successful in selecting and being part of the PG&E fleet electrification program to assist with facilitating the charging infrastructure. And the city will begin operating 4 electric buses this fall. So that's all in phase one, in addition to some additional buses that we'll be getting and chargers that we'll be installing. That's all phase one. Phase two at this point, which is going to be addition of 5 to 10 BEBs, or battery electric buses, and 5 dual port chargers. That is mostly funded at this time, but we haven't begun to plan or construct. Phase 3 is what we're talking about. This is kind of the big hurdle for the city. Is what does this resiliency phase look like? This is the maturing phase of having an electric fleet, which is what happens during a public safety power shutdown. How do we build resiliency into our electric fleet? At what stage does the city need a generator and battery storage? Is a solar field part of this potential microgrid? And then the 4th phase will kind of be the capstone, where we finish off all of our buses have hit the replacement life cycle stage, and we're able to replace the last of them. So that's kind of the big picture of this electrification. So jumping back into kind of the general direction that we have here, which is it came from the Climate Action Plan in 2012, which was the initial document that has led to many sustainable and carbon reducing initiatives here at the city. This measure within the city Climate Action Plan first identified the city's goals of using low carbon fuel. Using the climate action plan, the city was able to join 171 other transit agencies and sign on to the FTA, Federal Transit Administration's Healthy Planet Challenge on behalf of the city. And in order for the city bus to participate in the next stage of the challenge, we'll need to develop a measurable greenhouse gas emission targets for our bus fleet, not just say that that's our goal and that we're looking to use a low carbon fuel, but actually setting specific targets will be required. We discussed this, but just generally the direction again was provided by the state. It was the major catalyst for the development of this 100% battery electric fleet. It came in 2018-19 with the innovative clean transit rule that CARB set. The ICT rule was the first of its kind and was a part of a larger statewide effort to address public health, air quality, and climate protection goals. To comply with the ICT, our office will return to the Climate Action Subcommittee in 2023 with a zero emissions bus rollout plan. Just for in terms of terms for the public and everyone, the ZEB is the zero emissions bus rollout. And zero emissions bus is either going to be what the city's planning to use, which are BEBs, battery electric buses, which charge and hold energy on the vehicle via the battery that then charges the electric motor. But some agencies are using fuel cell electric buses, which is generally hydrogens on board that then it is converted to electricity. So there's the difference. That's the difference between the ZEB. But in most of this presentation, we'll refer to BEBs, battery electric buses. So the city is considered the city of Santa Rosa city bus is considered a small transit agency. Therefore, implementation under the ICT rules is a little bit delayed compared to larger agencies. So we'll be starting in 2026. And by 2029, all of our bus purchases will be required to be 100% zero emissions buses. The ICT rule currently doesn't apply to paratransit vehicles. It does address them, but it doesn't. That class of vehicle, the federal testing hasn't gone through to allow us to use federal funds. So once that sector matures, we will be. That the ICT will have requirements in place. When we come back to council or to the Climate Action Subcommittee this in early 2023 with the zero emissions fleet plan, that plan will be a living document. It'll be a map showing how the city expects to build 100% battery electric fleet. The plan will identify our current fleet composition. It will estimate timelines for both vehicle replacement and supporting infrastructure development, the chargers. It'll detail how City Bus will deploy zero emissions buses within disadvantaged communities. And it will provide a training plan for our operators and maintenance staff, how we'll bring everybody up to board and be prepared to successfully operate and maintain these vehicles. And it'll clearly identify our funding. So we'll be going over quite a bit of that today. Finally, the zero emissions bus plan must be approved by our governing body, City Council. So ultimately, the target will be full zero emissions bus fleet by 2040. So the benefits of going electric, council, staff, and the general public have over the years begun to better understand the benefits of operating battery electric buses, and we're just going to skim through this as we've presented many times to council on this matter. But the huge advantage is that the battery electric bus has zero tailpipe emissions. Their emissions depend solely on how the electricity is produced. And then there's the other potential advantages of increased ridership as people make different transportation choices, plus reduced noise and improved air quality, and the larger social health care potential savings associated with improved air quality. And then there is the potential life cycle savings from battery electric buses, whether it's from the fuel savings, operation savings, maintenance savings. There's no oil changes, less brake parts, no engine wear. You know, these are things that we may experience once we start operating, or we may not. But those are kind of potential secondary savings. And then that operating a battery electric fleet, you know, acting now to secure funding, as being in the right place in terms of deploying this technology, really makes us competitive for grants. So in terms of our planning, you know, the field of transit electrification is progressing quickly, with new information engineering strategies being tested with each transit agency that has implemented this type of infrastructure. City's transit division, with the award of the FTA funding in 2018, began drafting a engineering scope of work to hire some experts in the field to kind of understand how to deploy the technology. As part of this process, the transit division convened a meeting with Sonoma Clean Power, the RCPA, SCTA, to see if they had resources or expertise that could assist the city in this endeavor. These regional partners quickly stepped up to the challenge, and Sonoma Clean Power hired a consultant to do an infrastructure study. This engineering and planning study looked at existing facilities, short-term and long-term planning, not just for city bus, but for the transit operators in Mendocino and Sonoma County. And by the end of 2019, we had a kind of a solid blueprint of the resources that we needed to begin to electrify our fleet. You know, you know, the study covered everything from, you know, the charging equipment, types of buses, the range that the buses can handle based off the battery, and then some of the resiliency strategies. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to talk about how we got what our funding makeup looks like.
So hi, thank you, Sean Sosa, Administrative Analyst. So this slide here just represents our current level of actual funding for our bus buys. We have approximately $22 million committed toward these replacements. And these pie charts show the same funds 3 different ways. So it's not like we have that much more money. It's the same amount of money, just different ways of presenting it. So on the first pie chart on the left, that just kind of shows that we're pretty evenly split, that we got almost half of each from state and federal funds. On the second chart, it just kind of shows how we actually achieved getting this funding, with over half of it coming through a competitive grant program. So there was a lot of hard work on our team, previous employees as well. Pam Lawrence was my previous counterpart. She's now in the police department. She was successful in getting a federal award as well. Others here that have assisted with the grant applications. So a lot of work, a lot of good applications have been sent in. And part of it too, I think, is the actions that were taken by council in the past, including moving to evergreen power and the early adoption of our climate action plan that allows us to be able to fill in our grant applications, all these great qualities of Santa Rosa, and what we think help us to stand out to allow us to have achieved these awards. So the third also just shows us each specific funding source, just to show, you know, all the different places we actually have received funding from. And I did want to point out to you, we have that little pie slice outlined in red. That is our Transit Capital Reserve funding, the TDA. So just to show that we are still trying to get some other funding to cover this portion, because this is our capital reserve that can be used for any other types of things, like keeping our building in order, the actual transit operations building. So we're trying to minimize the use of that funding. So we are applying for other funds such as HFIP or anything else to try to minimize the use of our capital. Next slide. And then this one here just talks about the infrastructure funding. This is separate from the bus funding that we have that's committed. So here we have an additional $2.6 million. And in the first chart here, it shows that we have an additional $750,000 of our capital reserve is being used to fund this program. We, again, are still pursuing other programs to try to offset that cost. But the second one just shows the cost of each phase of the project. You can see that, you know, we are going to be spending a little bit more that we anticipate on phase 2 because of inflation and because we are going to be going further into the yards. There's going to be a lot more cutting into the ground and scoping work being done to just make sure that where we're planning on putting everything doesn't have anything underground. So we do anticipate that to cost a little bit more, but overall pretty equal. And this will get us 10 chargers installed, each with dual ports. So once each phase is done, we'll be able to get 20 buses charged. So I'll hand the rest of the slides for now to Yuri.
So with all these resources, we're ready to start building. And that's what we've done. You know, that what the building in our minds is made up of, you know, we've started breaking ground. Here's an image of the crews laying the concrete slab where some of the charging infrastructure will sit. And so this, you know, the infrastructure is made up of the power, which as of 2020, council decided that the electricity used by the city facilities would be solar by day and geothermal by night, otherwise known as evergreen. And then the chargers, which for this current phase are made possible through a fleet of electrification program, which we're working with PG&E on. And finally, the buses, and we'll go into greater detail on all those. So first, you know, the power, the 100% local renewable evergreen program, the city of Santa Rosa started operating that, using that electricity. The geothermal power comes from the geyser fields north of here, as well as using solar. This energy portfolio is provided by Sonoma Clean Power, and we're very unique. I mean, we get very excited here in transit, you know, to realize that, you know, a lot of places throughout the country don't have this opportunity to have 100% local renewable power. So, you know, when we apply for grants, we really try to talk about that. And because really the battery electric buses, they have zero tailpipe emissions. The emissions depend solely on where the electricity is coming from. And so we're very privileged to have, we're very lucky to have the solar fields or the geothermal fields north of here. And then the charging infrastructure. Here's a map image of the yard on Stony Point Road, here is the project site. You can see it highlighted there in yellow in the smaller yellow box. In April of 2019, council study session approved the city's participation in the PG&E EV fleet program. This covers about $140,000 of infrastructure to the meter. And that's, you know, that's going from basically the power to where we start the charging infrastructure, and then the behind the meter, which is the part that the city contracts for. We received incentives up to just over $200,000 in rebates. And then in turn, the city committed to purchasing 9 battery electric buses with 5 dual port chargers by 2024 at the time. So, that we just need to be committed to buying those vehicles. We don't actually have to have them in hand by 2024. And we need to operate it for a minimum of 10 years. And then in May of 2020, council approved the EV fleet contract. In January of 2021, council authorized a design build procurement, which allowed us to do the behind the meter construction. And in April of 2021, council approved the contract with Cupertino to actually build that infrastructure. So here's kind of what the to the meter and the behind the meter. You know, the to the meter is basically from the power line to the panel, includes basically it's the source of the electricity, and that's what PG&E is covering on their own. And then the city's paying for constructing and owning the chargers themselves and the infrastructure there. That includes the switch gear, and that's the part that's being constructed right now. So this is kind of a big picture of the whole project. You can see from the existing poles over on the left of the screen, The orange line is the new power line that leads to where there's current, in the image, there's 5 green triangles, and that's where the buses would park. And then the orange, smaller, rectangles are there where the charging infrastructure is going to be. So that's kind of that's this phase 1A, if you will, phase 1 infrastructure. And here's another image of the equipment going in. You can see where the ports are, what ports are going to be, and the buses will pull up to. What you're seeing in the foreground there is where the switch gear and the charging infrastructure, support infrastructure will be, and then the chargers will be there along the fence. And here's the progress with the concrete lathe and the charger, the initial chargers put in place. And here's a close-up of one of the chargers, along with the cord that will eventually connect to the bus. And then here is kind of shows all the phases of the project. The green and blue buses would be the first phase. The yellow and blue buses, some of that is the second phase, and then the third phase would be the final phase. So this is just early conceptual designs that we have used moving forward. And I'm going to turn it back over to Sean. He can talk a little bit more about our fleet.
So we're just going to touch on, we haven't really discussed paratransit much because like Yuri mentioned, with ICT, it's not really a requirement. It's not really capable as far as FTA funding is concerned now because of the testing, but we're still going to discuss a little bit about it. So we can look at the next slide briefly. So this just kind of discusses the funding and the fleet combined on one slide. So we do have, I think Yuri, I think there's a animation here. If you progress to the next, there we go. So we have funding that is either awarded or we are pretty confident, 99.8% confident that we're going to be awarded to help replace these 4 vehicles. And one of the things that, like we were mentioning though, that we really can't accommodate is to get these into electric as quick. So I just threw in 2 charts here just to kind of show on the left here, you know, assuming that we are going to be coming to council probably in early 2023 to request purchase of gas replacement vehicles, we're going to be using about 200,000 of our local TDA capital. If for some reason we are able to find FTA Altoona tested vehicles and somehow determine how we can get those vehicles charged on site, the other chart here shows the potential increase in cost. I will note that, you know, we don't know prices right now because there are no electric vehicles that are FTA Altoona tested. So we don't know prices for those. This is just a guess. I have seen other transit agencies, rather than just doubling the price, tripling the price. So this could be a very undervalued estimate on my part. But again, just to let you know why it is we're going to be probably coming to you to request gas vehicles, is that right now there are no FTA approved or otherwise called Altoona tested vehicles at this time that are electric. So we can't use any of our federal awards to purchase electric vehicles, even if somebody had one. Also vehicle costs, you know, we don't know what it's going to be. We know it's going to be more, but right now we're already spending 200,000 of our own capital. And we just don't have more money right now yet, even if an electric vehicle were to come up. And then third is the big one, is the charging source. Like Yuri mentioned, you know, we're building out phase 1 right now. 1A is putting in 3 chargers. That's going to be enough to be able to charge 6 buses at once, but we're going to be having 4 buses arriving in the next month and a half. And once we get full phase 1 installed, we'll have 5 chargers, which are 10 ports, but we'll have also probably received by then our next round of 5 buses, which means that each port will essentially be taken. So we just don't have the speed and capacity of those chargers to keep up with all the vehicles if we were just to do them all at once. The other thing is too, with regard to paratransit, is it is operated by a contractor of ours. So there will still have to be some sort of negotiations with them, because there are vehicles, and if we're going to start keeping them on site here and charging them here, that means having a contractor continually coming on site on a daily basis to getting those vehicles. So there will have to be some negotiation of how they can change that up rather than keeping them on their site. So we are looking into it. We're not trying to dissuade the council saying that we're going to evade electrification of this fleet. But right now there's just a lot of barriers with the paratransit cutaway fleet. But we're continually looking to see how we might be able to move into that phase of electrifying these vehicles. So now we can go on to the next slide.
Sean, I'll just add that for paratransit, those vehicles are replaced every 6 to 10 years versus the full fleet is replaced. I mean, the fixed fleet is replaced, every 12 to 15 years. So there's a quicker life cycle cost. We'll have an opportunity to replace those vehicles with electric sooner than we would an electric or the fixed fleet. Sorry.
Yeah, good point. Thanks. So here's the meat and potatoes, though, about electrification. We're talking about our fixed fleet now. So we'll go on to our next slide. And this is our current fleet. And Yuri, if you can actually go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. This shows the vehicles that we do have funds to replace. Now, looking at this, we can't just go out and buy 15 vehicles, even though we have the funding for it. Just to kind of reiterate that fact of we just don't have the chargers in place yet to accommodate all these vehicles at once. The second thing is we are purchasing Proterra vehicles, the first 4. So when they arrive in the next month and a half, we'll be able to get them on the road, see how they perform. And at the same time, we'll also be getting another 5 Proterras built. So by the time those 5 arrive, we'll have a good idea how those 4 performed. And so when we get those 5, we'll basically be able to understand of are they really giving us what we were requiring as far as distance and range or the quality of the bus, or should we be looking to other manufacturers and what have they changed and grown in their capabilities? So the other thing that we need to account for in the next replacement is, would we be able to get enough funding in the 12 to 6 years it takes to replace the vehicles all over again? If we were to buy 15 buses now because we have the funding, that might be great. But in 12, 13 years, when it's time to replace them, how are we going to get the money to replace 13 vehicles all over again? We've been really fortunate recently with some consecutive awards, but that doesn't happen all the time. So we have to sort of every couple of years get an influx of some buses, and then that way we at least have some time to apply for annual grants and be prepared to get these replacements in down the road. So what are we thinking is going to happen though with our fleet in the future? Yuri, if you can go on to the next slide, and actually the next part of it. There we go, and one more. Sorry, we didn't really notice these animations here. So this is what we're looking at probably the start of 2023. We're going to, like mentioned, have 4 Proterra vehicles. They're going to be running using the energy coming from Sonoma Clean Power. So we'll have those first, the EVs on the road and revenue service. Our riders will start to be able to enjoy our electric fleet. Next slide. And next, and next. So then here is what we're thinking is going to be happening, because on August 23rd, we're going to be requesting approval from council to purchase our next round of 5 buses. So in 2 weeks, we'll be talking to the council about that. And if approved, and if our timeline with Proterra is consistent, then by 2024, this is what our fleet is going to look like. We will have an additional 5 battery electric buses, also from Proterra, running on Sonoma Clean Power energy. So our fleet will start the dynamics of the shift between diesel and electric is going to be changing. Next slide. And awesome. So here is, these are the buses we have funding for. So this is what we're going to be looking to as far as the 3rd round of purchases. So there'll be up to 7 buses that will be asking for approval to purchase. That would probably be in 24, 25. Again, part of it is waiting to make sure that we have infrastructure, or at least the planned infrastructure in place to be able to accommodate the buses we receive. And also to spread out the installation of buses to be able to accommodate the replacement of them again in 12 to 15 years. So this is what we anticipate our fleet is going to look like in 2026, which is essentially half our fleet will be electric within hopefully the next 3 years or so. So we got a lot of progress. Will we be with Proterra? That's what the question mark is about. We'll see how the first 4 and then the 9 react and how everything works. And we'll see where we're going to go with the next round of them. So we can go to the next slide. And this is a couple of photos from one of the buses in production. Now, these were taken July 19th. They are a lot further down the development production phase. But this just kind of shows what the general frame of the bus looks like, the inside of the bus. The yellow on the bottom isn't the color of our floor. That's just a protective coating. But it's taking shape, but they're very close. We actually are looking at probably having the delivery towards the end of September. So we're getting really close to it. And I'll hand it off to Yuri now as well.
I'm going to start with going backwards for one quick second here in this slide presentation. Just to keep in mind, the ICT requirement by 2026 is for us to have 25% of our purchase be electric. So this is just to commend Sean's good work and the leadership of council to put us in a position where we're far at this point. Our trajectory is far exceeding the requirements of the ICT and the goal of 2026. We're council's really pushing us in the right direction to meet that ICT rule of 100% purchases by 2029 be electric. So. And so just to move forward, so Sean showed you the inside, and this is generally what the outside is going to look like, and how the vehicles will be delivered. This is kind of in our last purchase of vehicles, we kind of adopted this new paint scheme, kind of foreshadowing, with the green, the movement towards electric and kind of changing the look. These will be our first electric buses with this kind of look, and then we're going to apply this is a draft, first image we're sharing with the public, a draft of kind of what we're looking at in terms of what the wrap will look like. We worked with Sonoma Clean Power and with a number of staff at all levels to come up with a catchy statement that people could understand, and we could kind of demonstrate where the energy is coming from, and do something that had some complexity to it, where people looked at it a few times, they might not get the whole message with one look there. And so you can see the vehicles are, it's not just that we have 100% local renewable power in our region, it's that those vehicles are running on that power. And so we have an image in the one of a bus on the road. In the first zero is an image of the geyser fields, and then the other zero is a solar field with a little electric like a lightning strike through the percentage. This is our current draft, final draft. Next steps here on the 23rd. Council will be considering the purchase of 5 new electric buses. Later in 2022 or perhaps 23, we'll be coming for approval to complete phase 1 of our charging infrastructure by getting 2 more chargers for the project. Additionally, in 2023 is when we'll be coming to council with the rollout plan, or we'll probably come to the Climate Action Subcommittee first and then to council. In March of 2023, we'll have the opportunity to further participate in the Healthy Climate Challenge that FTA will be hosts, but that would require us to set greenhouse gas emissions targets. In 2024-25, we'll be seeking the replacement of more of the fleet. And we'll be in the design and construction phase 2 of phase 2 for the charging infrastructure, and then we need to address these ongoing future issues around resiliency, overall citywide electrification needs. It's not just transit vehicles that the city's attempting to electrify, but we have a whole yard of vehicles requiring electricity to quite the pull that we've never seen before at our facility. And then there'll be additional future collaboration. At this point, we're focused on depot charging here at the in the yard, but there may be an application for in-route charging, whether it's at Transit Mall or somewhere else, if we're working with regional partners. And then future technologies around telematics or other charging software. So this is where we'd like to seek council's feedback on any of these issues that we've raised, and take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, both of you. I'm really excited about this. I know you and I have talked a number of different times about electrification of the fleet. And I know you guys are only responsible for city bus, so I won't ask you about the fire department and the police department and some of our other vehicles, but I know we're all looking for efficiencies in the infrastructure to be able to make sure our entire city fleet is managed in a renewable and sustainable way. I don't really have any questions for you, just a general good job. This is pretty incredible, and I love being able to talk with my counterparts in other cities about what we're doing here in Santa Rosa. They're all trying to figure it out as well. So let me go to my colleagues and see if they have any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions. I was just going to say that I think it would be a good idea if we could partner with someone to get the ability to charge in other places aside from the yard. But I want to thank you guys. Council kind of opens the door for things, but the transit team really takes it and runs with it. And you guys go far beyond what we could imagine. Just the passion and the drive that you put into it. So it was a pleasure when I met you guys when I first started on council, and I haven't stopped raving about how good you guys are, and that I know you're really going to take us far into some good places. So thank you so much for the work that you guys have done here. You guys are awesome.
Thank you for those kind words. And yeah, I mean, it's a real interesting question, the in-route versus the depot charging. I mean, like Golden Gate Transit or Sonoma County Transit that run these longer distance trips, kind of the in-route charging or the end of the line charging makes more sense for them. A lot of our routes, you know, they max at like 150 to 170 miles in a day. And so with the batteries with the vehicles we're getting, we have these very large batteries, which should be able to perform that. There may be some benefits in the future of buying smaller batteries and doing 10-minute interval chargers at the transit mall. But in some of our initial studies, they kind of said, your first step is really your depot charging. So I appreciate that urging to look at other, as our fleet progresses, we'll look for other opportunities to diversify the charging. Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald, do you have anything?
No, I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and it's nice to see what's going to be coming over the next couple of years and increase the fleet and how we'll be able to kind of bolster that. Mine was around charging stations and what you do when you're out and about and you need to charge kind of midway through. Is there a plan or a backup plan for those types of things? I would assume these would be pretty tough to tow. So you answered all the questions, and the best part of coming onto council when I did was I get to inherit all the good work that you've been doing for several years. So I appreciate participating and for everything. And also just a shout out for the logo on the buses. That
We may have lost the council member. I know she was having internet issues.
you didn't hear anything I said, so my internet just went out again. So just think.
All right, let's go to Councilmember Rogers. We'll come back to you, Diana.
I know nothing about this, so I do not want to pretend like I do. But because we are known for having emergencies come up, I just, for about the ability to charge in other places, I just think that for me, it would be a good idea, especially if we're going all electric, to make sure that we had multiple places to even just get a jump to operate. Southwest, luckily, we have kind of stayed out of harm's way in a lot of instances, but that is, I mean, we can't take that for granted. So to have multiple places to charge would just be something I would be thinking about in case of an emergency also.
No, it's a really good point, and Sean, feel free to jump in too. I think where the studies have shown, you know, one of the things the study have shown is that this resiliency piece is really kind of like the next, you know, when we have 4 or even 9 buses, it's like a third of our fleet. So really our resiliency is built into, hey, we have diesel and we have electric, right? So it's kind of like there's a natural resiliency there, just the diversity of fuel. But once we start having essentially a full electric fleet, you know, the studies really talk about a generator and a fuel and a battery storage, basically. And so the battery storage has the capacity to, you know, right now we're going to, when we get these vehicles operating, we're going to be charging at night, which is a lower rate, but the lowest cost rate is basically when the sun's shining, right? So if with the battery backup, we can then basically pull from the grid at the lowest cost of time of electricity, and then when we go to charge the buses at night, we can kind of use the electricity from the battery backup as our first charge, you know, as our first charging mechanism, and essentially lower our costs. So that's one benefit of batteries, but also if something goes down, you also have the batteries as backup if the electric grid goes down. And then the second piece is having a generator that then could, if everything goes down, basically provide energy to the batteries. You know, having multiple locations for charging, well, you know, it's all very expensive. So that's kind of the you're trying to basically balance, like where can we get the biggest bang for our buck? Is it in by creating another location? Is that the best resiliency, or is it by purchasing this other type of equipment? But having the multiple locations has an advantage if you also have other agencies that are going to be using it on a day-to-day basis. So that's really where we've tried to look towards our other agency partners, whether it's Sonoma County or Golden Gate, or you know, looking for other partners where we can charge from there in the emergency, and they can charge from there on the day-to-day basis. So there you have this advantage of kind of those multiple uses. So yeah, it's a, you know, and the industry is changing so much, and I think, like the mayor said, like, you know, we have this larger fleet question that's citywide. So there's definitely some studies that we need to do to kind of better understand what is the kind of the best path forward to kind of building in that resiliency as we build out more of a fleet.
Well, again, I must say that you guys are the experts, and I just come up with things that I'm thinking about, like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? But I know that if you don't have the answers, that your team definitely will strive to get the answers. So I think we're in good hands.
Well, we appreciate continue to be challenged and asked the questions by you or the public, or any, you know, because it's, you know, this is a very new field, and it's exciting to be a part of.
And to be called experts at that, yeah, we do appreciate that, but we will definitely take any thoughts or comments to help us continue to understand this ourselves even more.
Let's go to public comments then. Look, I knew. Let's go to Kevin Conway.
Yes, hi, thank you. Thank you, Sean and Yuri, for your hard work and your presentation. One of the questions I have was that you mentioned that there is now the money for 15 new buses, but because of the problem with the need to charge them all and to have the proper equipment for doing that, they're not going to be purchased now. And then there was a mention that there would be a commitment to purchase by 2024. I don't understand, if the money is there now, why can't we make that commitment to purchase, I think it was 5 buses. Why can't we make that commitment now? And then the other comment or thought that I have was that, you know, during the 4 phases that you mentioned, I noticed that there was no time frame associated with those phases. And I always appreciate it when I can have a broader perspective of what the time frame does look like. But in phase 3, you mentioned a microgrid. And I know that at one point, our city had a microgrid on the radar. And since the ability to purchase all 15 buses that we have the money for is hindered by the charging system, can't the development of a microgrid and be done in tandem so that we are able to more readily purchase these buses, since a microgrid would provide the charging system under, you know, that we need to be able to keep them running. Also, about funding, I've never understood entirely where the PG&E settlement funds have gone. I know there was a lot of money there, and if our city has access to that, I would hope that some of that would be going to this segment of the emissions pie, transportation, which is the highest emitting segment of that pie chart. So I guess those are my thoughts and my comments. I apologize if, you know, if some of them were based on insufficient knowledge, because like Councilmember Rogers, I don't fully understand some of the language or some of the, you know, the things that were being discussed. But anyway, as I say, I do appreciate your hard work, and I look forward to seeing your hard work come to fruition in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I don't see any other hands, so I'll bring it back. So without going into a deep dive on PG&E, Kevin, perhaps you and I can follow up offline with that discussion. We do have, from our budget presentations, a full breakdown of where all of the dollars went for ARPA and for the PG&E funds, so that we can talk about that. And then Yuri or Sean, feel free to correct me. But what I heard from your presentation is a little bit different than Kevin's, which is that you have the resources to purchase the buses, but we don't have the infrastructure, which gives us an opportunity, yes, to still use those funds on future buses, but gives us an opportunity to actually test out this type of bus with the first 4 that we're getting before we commit to the next 5. And if it turns out great, then we're able to make that purchase. Is that?
Yeah, that's partly it. It's partly just time horizons with just, it's not that the infrastructure is holding us back. It's just that the actual construction of the infrastructure is complicated enough. And the timeline that it takes to actually build and purchase a bus. I mean, it's more the timelines for just acquiring all the equipment. You know, we have the money in hand, but to actually put the pieces in place and do the procurement and get everything on site. We're moving as fast as we can, but those horizons are, it takes 16 months for us to get a bus. 2 years through the whole process, essentially. So we're moving as quickly as we can, and so we're very fortunate to have the funding sitting there. So now we can really continue to work on the projects themselves. Would you say that's right, Sean? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and we might say we have the funding. It's not sitting in our bank account just yet. We just received 2 major awards in the last 6 months. So we still have to actually sign the paperwork, and then we actually have access to the funds. So that's part of it too. It's just a matter of, as the things are rolling in, but we have the awards. It's just a matter of getting our hands on the money, and then we can really get into the process. Otherwise, it's like starting to build a house, knowing your checking account's going to have money in it, rather than actually getting the money in the checking account and then starting construction.
All right, council member, go ahead.
Sorry, Sean, I like that one. So I wanted to ask, with funding, is there a time frame in which maybe if we take too long, we're at jeopardy of losing funding, or once we have secured a grant, it is ours and there's not a time frame to spend it? I don't know if I'm going in the weeds, but
no, I know where you're going with that. So yeah, it's generally there are time limits when awards are made. So like with our buses that are going to be arriving in September, these are awards from the 2017 and the 2018 fiscal year, federal fiscal years. So the 17 wasn't actually awarded though until late 2018. So, there are some delays there, but by the time we actually got our hands on the money to actually do something with it, it really shortened the time, saying it's 2017 money, but by the time we can actually act on it. So FTA and the other groups that are giving this money out, they don't expect us to hold the money for 10, 15 years and just kind of wait and see. They want us to spend this money. FTA wants us to get buses on the road. But at the same token, they know that there are time constraints. So, built into our grant, we do have our anticipated timeline, deadlines. We can request extensions, but that's requesting of FTA. And generally, they're not going to want to take money away unless we're really bad actors with it. If we're just like 10 years later saying, oh, we're not doing anything and we have no plans, then they're going to probably do something about that. But if we're actively showing progress, then generally that money is safe.
And lastly, Sean, I think you need to give all of us a lesson in how not to build the house before our bank account has the money. But I'm just saying.
I'm still waiting for more of my checking account to do that.
All right, thanks, folks. Really appreciate it. We'll keep up on this in the coming meeting. All right, subcommittee, the last item of the day is our presentation for future agenda items. It's not really a presentation, it's actually an attachment. So I will see, first and foremost, let's go to public comment. Let's see if folks have anything that they'd like to ask or add for our consideration on that list. I don't see any hands, so I'll bring it back. Tasha, was there anything you wanted to highlight, or council members, anything you wanted to add? Go ahead, Tasha.
I'll just go ahead and say thank you very, very much to both Peter and Yuri and Sean. Those were amazing presentations, and I felt they really broke it down to a palatable, or not palatable, but a very a level at which we could understand and digest. And it's really, really exciting for the city. So I think it's something for us to be proud of, and see that we're working very hard towards the future and reducing our GHGs. So thank you. Our hats are off to all of you. I know this is a lot of hard work, but very, very impressive. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you aren't able to see the agenda, that we have a conversation with our PED folks, that they are going to be presenting on the general plan update and how the
planning and economic development for
folks who
don't know
acronyms. Yes, the alphabet soup. Sometimes we forget. So the general plan update and how the climate action plan and the municipal action plan are going to be incorporated into that. So that's exciting. And then the other part that we'll be looking at, the second item, is from Transportation and Public Works, which we call TPW for short. And they'll be coming back with a discussion about the Unlimited Rides program and then also the short range transit plan. So that's what we're working on at this point. And I have several others in the works for October, just waiting for confirmations. And that's it from me.
All right. Anything else, council members?
No, not really, but yes, I really would. I love everything that we're doing. I think we have a great lineup here for pending. I really would like to see maybe some inviting more community members, and I know we always say getting back to the basics, but what are some things, like if we invite a bunch of teachers, who are the organizations that are out there that are willing to come teach the children how to do things? Because I think that is the way that we can really bring it into the homes of our residents, is through children, and inviting other, like doing a big push to invite people to these meetings and just really educating people on the really small things, because I think we look at things with our departments, and even with me learning water, it's taking a lot. Like I'm into it and I'm getting it now, right? So I see Peter's excitement and why he's excited, but it takes some time. So just giving our community members little pieces to see how they can go back and take it back and actually implement it, I think would be a good use, but the mayor may not agree with that. I just think that climate action.
No, I think it's a great idea. Let's talk about how to actually do that. Because we do advertise the meetings. They are open to the public. We do invite people to present and participate. And so let's talk more about how we actually engage those folks.
Yeah, and target for certain, like we're only going to have in this meeting maybe people that are organizations that will come in and help your children do, or help people in the community do this, this, and this. Do we have community gardens? How does that look? How does that work? And, just things that maybe people are already doing in the community, but the ability to showcase them, and how do we utilize their services?
All right. Sounds good. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.